Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan, where I've been practicing law for 25 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I often write about the stuff at places roadandtrack.com, and I've written a few books as well. Today we're going to talk about end those crazy bank fees. End those crazy bank fees. I'm not talking about getting the banks to end them, because the banks won't, but you can end them by making them not happen to you. That's the key. So what I'm talking about is quite often banks charge crazy fees for silly things, and they add up. And I'll give you an example from my own life. A couple weeks ago, I got a thing in the mail from one of the larger banks in America, not Wells Fargo, but about that size. And I used to have 3 or 4 bank accounts with them. I've only got one now, but I had 3 or 4 bank accounts with them. And somewhere along the line, I ended up with a savings account that had less than $2 in it. And I honestly thought I'd closed the account. I hadn't heard about the account in years. And then all of a sudden I started getting these quarterly statements that says, oh, by the way, you still have $1.87 in this account. And now, I suppose I could go to the bank and close it out and get my $1.87 back. Or if I wanted to put money into a savings account, which I suspect probably earns about 0.05% interest, I could have put more money in that account. But I did neither. And about once a quarter, like I said, I get that paper statement in the mail saying you got $1.87 in the bank. And so recently I got a letter from this bank, and I opened it up, and it said, you now owe us $8.13 in your savings account. And I looked at it and I thought, that's unusual. Most savings accounts aren't backwards. It's not me giving them money. It's them hanging on to my money, I would think. So I read the statement, and I deduced what had happened. And they had apparently just unilaterally invented a new rule that said if your savings account dips below a certain amount, they can start charging you money. Which, if you think about it, it's the greatest scam ever. Let us borrow money from you, because the bank's borrowing your money. Let us borrow money from you. We'll use it as we see fit. We'll pay you some infinitesimal amount of interest, and if your balance drops too low, we're going to charge you money because you haven't lent us enough. So I called the bank up, and I got an operator, and I said, hey, I got this interesting bill saying I owe you guys $8.13. And the woman says, yeah, you got hit with a service charge for $10 for having your account drop below whatever. I said, when did that happen? And I know the answer. It happened about 8 years ago. And she said, oh, you've had $1.87 in this account for, 7 or 8 years. I said, yeah. I said, quite frankly, I forgot I had the account. I said, I get these things in the mail once in a while saying, by the way, you've got this $1.87 in this dormant account. But I said, and I apologize. I suppose I should have withdrawn my $1.87, but I didn't. I said, so you understand I'm not paying you $8.13, right? And she said, oh, she's stammering. I said, well, no. The rule that you guys unilaterally changed happened recently, but I opened that account up a long time ago, and I said, and so when I opened the account up, there was a set of rules. You guys can't just invent new rules. I mean, that's crazy. She said, okay, well, we'll waive the $8.13. And I said, okay, well, actually, you should waive all $10 of it because that's what you're claiming. And I said, and that $1.87 is mine. She said, oh. She goes, I guess you're right. And I said, well, yeah, I am. I said, and by the way, I actually have another account with you guys. Could you just take the $1.87 and put it in that account? And the woman said, oh, something, we'll do that. And she goes, and we'll close this account for you. And I said, oh, that's probably a good idea. So banks will do this stuff, but they actually do other things as well, some of which is legal, by the way, but they just find ways to get you, to nickel and dime you, or to $1.87 you. So there's a recent article in the Detroit Free Press, which I'd like to mention. Susan Tompour wrote it. She's I think their financial writer. And she points out that financially strapped consumers who frequently end up overdrawing their checking accounts can pay up to more than $400 a year on average in overdraft fees on transactions involving their debit and ATM cards. And this is one of the most inane charges for you to get hit with, because this is a charge that you have to opt into. Okay? Pay attention. this is a charge that you've said, I agree with, go ahead and do this to me. They can't do it to you without your permission. Consumers must voluntarily sign up for overdraft coverage for point-of-sale purchases with a debit card or transaction using an ATM. So what we're talking about here is if you have credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, and so on, where you're allowed to charge things up to a certain amount and then you pay back and there's interest and all that, that's a credit card. I'm talking about the ATM or debit card you use, which acts like a credit card. You can use it at a point of sale. You can swipe it. You can stick it in there if it's got a chip on it. You can wave it if you're using Square or something. But the point is, I'm talking about the ATM card, okay, or the debit card. It's not a credit card. It's an ATM or debit card. It represents money that you have in a banking institution, and you're letting someone else take the money off your card. The way the law is set up right now is that if you have that ATM card and you have not authorized someone to overdraft it, what happens is, let's suppose you've got $25 in your debit account. $25, okay, just 25 bucks. And you go and you buy $20 worth of something. You go up, swipe the card, 20 bucks gets taken off your card, you have $5 left in your account. Makes complete sense. Let's suppose you got $25 on your card, and instead you buy something for $30. You walk up the counter, you swipe the card for $30. The card will get rejected in the normal course of business. So what'll happen is they'll come back and they'll say, they're not going to come out and have something flash going, you don't have the money. But it'll say the card was declined, okay, for whatever reason. And we've all seen that uncomfortable transaction happen in front of us in line, where somebody then has to scramble and find another card and make excuses as to why this doesn't actually mean what you think it does. But we all know it does. So your card would get declined trying to make a $30 purchase with $25 balance on your debit card. So if you want to, you can go to most banks and say, look, I want overdraft coverage, or whatever you're going to call it, on my debit card. And quite often they offer this to you. And they say, would you like to have this coverage? And you say, what's the coverage? And they say, well, the coverage is if you go in and swipe your card and there's not enough money in your account to cover it, we'll actually authorize that, let it happen, and then you just pay a small convenience fee. Small being a lie, convenience being a misnomer. Small convenience fee. So keep in mind that consumers have to voluntarily sign up for overdraft coverage for point-of-sale purchases with a debit card or transaction using an ATM. And signing up means that they can then charge you for the convenience, and the charge is usually more than you'd expect. And like I said, it's not really convenience. Consumers spend about $15 billion, with a B, $15 billion a year in overdraft fees. About 9% of checking accounts are held by consumers who are viewed as frequent overdrafters. And that's people who attempt to overdraw their accounts more than 10 times in a 12-month period, according to the federal watchdog agency, the CFPB. So think about that now. Almost 10% of checking accounts that exist are held by people who routinely overdraw their accounts 10 times a year. And people who face repeated overdraft fees pay 79% of all overdraft fees. So, in other words, there are people out there who've got this coverage and never use it, or use it once or twice. But there's a smaller group, but substantial, that use this coverage all the time, and they're just getting hammered by these fees. And I've heard of similar stories with people who have checking accounts, okay? And I stood in line behind a woman at the post office the other day who was writing a check, and I thought, wow, if we couldn't think of another way to slow this transaction down, at the very end, she goes, oh, I'll pay by check, and she starts digging for her checkbook, which she could have located earlier, but it's another story altogether. And I remember when I was in, I think, junior high school, taking a math class where they said, oh, we're going to spend a week explaining how checking accounts work, and we actually got little workbooks. Pretended you deposit some money, then you cut some checks, then you balance your account. And I got my first checking account when I lived in Bad Axe, Michigan. Look it up, it's real. Bad Axe, Michigan. B-A-D, next word, A-X-E. Got to use all 6 letters. Bad Axe, Michigan. I was a disc jockey there, and I got a checking account with the First National Bank of Bad Axe. Yes, there is such a thing. At least there was in 1982. And I got a checking account. And I remember actually having a checking account with a little book and writing in pen and doing the math at the, you write a check and you balance the checkbook and you do this. And so I don't remember having trouble bouncing checks, but I'm not sure what the overdraft fees would have been in 1982. I've spoken to people before who tell me that they have friends or acquaintances, it's often young people, who get checking accounts and then just run into all kinds of trouble with them. So, a young kid gets a checking account, puts $200 in the account, accidentally writes $220 worth of checks. There's a bunch of fees that get tacked on. Doesn't quite figure out what the fees are going to be, puts in some more money to cover those checks, writes some more checks, and of course the fees that are going in are being subtracted immediately, even though the notices are being sent by mail. And next thing you know, kid's written $300 worth of checks, and he's had $400 worth of fees tacked on. It happens. So the CFPB reviewed data from more than 40 million accounts at several large banks nationwide, and it plans to roll out a new Know Before You Owe disclosure to help consumers better understand the costs of overdraft fees and how those fees are triggered. And we're talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's a federal agency. But, this is one of those things that the government can only do so much. They can't protect you from yourself. And so they're thinking about trying to somehow warn people about this. And the best thing you can do is just simply know about it and think about it and try to, act accordingly. Under federal regulations that went into effect in 2010, banks cannot charge overdraft fees for debit purchases or ATM withdrawals without your consent and having you opt into the program. So right now, if you have a debit card or an ATM card, you need to ask yourself, do I want this card to be declined if it's short on money, or do I want it to be paid, and then am I happy paying some ridiculous $37 fee? Because that's what it's going to be. It's not $1.50. It's going to be substantial. And by the way, you've got to go back and pay whatever the shortage was. So you have $20 in your account. You buy something for $30. It gets approved. You got to pay back the $10 over plus another $37 for the fee or whatever the fee is. So it's substantial. So what often happens is a representative at the bank or the credit union will put a piece of paper in front of you when you're signing up for the debit card or the ATM card. They say, by the way, would you like this coverage? And what will happen is your card won't get declined so long as you're not trying to buy like $1 million yacht or something when you only have $5 in your account. We'll cover it up to a certain amount, but then we're also simply going to charge you this convenience fee. And like I said, it's neither convenient nor a fee because it's actually punitive. So many consumers don't realize that there is no fee for a declined card. And that's really the key here. Right now, the card I've got in my wallet, I've got two of them actually, that act as ATM cards or debit cards, are both simply set to decline my purchase if the money's not there. I should know how much money's in my account, and I just simply shouldn't be using it. I don't spend money I don't have, okay? And that's a good way to live if you can. And don't get me wrong, if you want to spend that fee and you understand that the fee is there, knock yourself out, do it, and just understand that it's there. Consumer advocates maintain that overdraft fees have turned into a highly lucrative profit center for some financial institutions. Consumers, of course, have more than one way to rack up overdraft fees. It's possible to overdraw accounts via online bill payments also. That's another one. Or automatic payments for utilities and other bills. And, there's a lot of places out there that say, instead of just mailing us a check, you can come online and pay us. And by the way, if you really want to make this really convenient, come online and set it up to where we'll just take the money out of your account each month. And some places will give you a discount for doing that. I know that my premium television image provider, I refuse to use the word cable or satellite, but the provider of images for my TV set actually gives me a discount for setting up on autopay. So I set it up as autopay, and it saves me a couple bucks a month from otherwise exorbitant fees that I pay to watch television. But I digress. So you can also get dinged for fees that way. So be aware of that also. As pointed out by Richard Cordray, head of the Financial Consumer Protection Bureau, speaking with USA Today, this practice gives consumers access to funds, but at a cost. The fee for each overdraft can be about $34 and is required to be paid with deposits into the account, so you got to pay the money back. And it's possible with some small debit card purchases to end up triggering the $34 overdraft. And as they point out, it's possible that the overdraft charge can be larger than the amount of money they let you go over. So you're off by $1. They pay the dollar, and bingo, you now owe them $35. So those fees add up. The agency said those who frequently overdraft an account and opt in for debit card and ATM coverage are charged 18 fees per year, compared with 5 for those who do not opt into the coverage but paid overdraft fees. So 18 times a year for those people. And despite recent regulatory and industry changes, consumers with a low account balance and little margin for error continue to pay significant overdraft fees. Many people who are hit with one overdraft after another do not have much wiggle room. Vulnerable consumers may have an average balance at the end of the day that's less than $350, according to the Consumer Protection Agency. And they point out that it's often people with lower credit scores who are already in trouble, and this just digs them in deeper. So again, like I said, the overdraft fees, or whatever you want to call them, come with your ATM card or debit card or your checking account for that matter. They're not evil, they're not illegal, but they're just pretty large. So you need to understand what they are and what triggers them. But you have to ask yourself the question, what do I want to happen should I go into a store and I think I've got money in my debit, because no one's going to yank their ATM card out and try to use it if they know there's no money in it. What should I do if I make the mistake thinking I've got the money and I don't? Do I want to swipe it and risk paying a crazy overdraft fee, or do I want to swipe it and have it say card declined, and you say, oh, shoot, I need to use a different card? Okay, that's the choice that you need to be able to make at that time, I would think. Or if you want to opt into the program and pay those crazy bank fees, that's fine also. But just understand how much they add up by the end of the year, because some people are literally paying hundreds and hundreds and sometimes even thousands of dollars in crazy bank fees. And I think it's time that you end those crazy bank fees. Questions or comments, as always, shoot them my way, lehtoslaw.com, LEHTOSLAW.com. I'm on Twitter at Steve Lehto, at STEVELEHTO. And this show is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play, and YouTube. Forgive the one bad edit, but I have to make an edit. You've already seen it, but I'm talking about it now because that's how video works. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye-bye.